For 10 long years, she had no warm bed. The alien woman, thin and tired, lived in the ruins of her fallen colony. Her skin was pale, almost blue from years of cold. Her long silver hair always messy. Her arms scarred and bruised. At night, she slept under broken roofs wrapped in scraps of metal and cloth. No one ever came looking for her. No one ever asked her name. To the world, she didn't exist. She had once been someone, once had a home, even a family. But the war came. And after the war, her people abandoned the weak, the wounded, and the unwanted. They left her behind. She didn't know why. Maybe because she was too young to fight, too strange to understand. Maybe just bad luck. The nights were the worst. Wind howled through the broken buildings. Her bones hurt from the cold. Sometimes, she pressed herself against broken machines for warmth, hoping the old heat cores inside might still give a little warmth. Most didn't. She had learned to eat little, a few plants here, some insects there. She once found a sealed box of human rations, dry, old, but it saved her that winter. But she wasn't just hungry for food, she was hungry for kindness. For someone to say, "You matter," for a warm bed, for safety. One evening she saw something strange, a firelight in the distance. It flickered inside a wooden human structure built recently on the edge of the colony ruins. Humans had come after the war, building quiet outposts and supply shelters. Most aliens stayed away, afraid. But she felt drawn. For hours, she stood far away, watching from the shadows. The human inside moved slowly. He was tall, strong, wore a heavy coat, and had kind eyes. He didn't look like a soldier. He didn't carry a weapon. He was calm. She didn't move closer that night. She just stood there and stared at the warm glow of the fire through his window. Her feet were frozen, her stomach twisted with hunger. But still she stared. That night she dreamed of blankets. The next day she tried to move closer. She waited until sunset. Her heart pounded as she stepped through the ruins. Every step was slow, cautious. If the human saw her, would he shoot? Would he yell? Would he tell others? But her body could not take the cold anymore. As she reached the edge of his shelter, her legs gave out. She collapsed near the back of the building, her body half hidden by broken metal. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just lay there, too tired to cry. Then, she heard footsteps. The door creaked open. Boots walked across the dirt. The human had seen her. She closed her eyes, expecting pain, expecting rejection, but instead, a blanket fell over her shoulders. It was soft, thick, still warm from the fire. He didn't say a word. He just stood there for a moment, then went back inside. She opened her eyes slowly, looked at the blanket, touched it. It felt like heaven. She curled into it, wrapping it around her fragile body. For the first time in years, the wind didn't sting her skin. Her fingers stopped shaking. Her tears didn't freeze. She slept. Hours passed. The human didn't chase her away. He didn't call guards. He just let her sleep, near his door, with his blanket. When morning came, she sat up slowly. The sun was weak, the ground still cold. But then the door opened again. He stood there, holding something in his hand, a mug of warm liquid. She didn't understand the word he spoke, but she understood the gesture. He offered it to her. Her hands trembled as she took it. It smelled sweet. Hot broth, maybe tea. Her voice cracked. "Please, just one night, in a warm bed." He blinked, surprised. She had not spoken for years, not to anyone. Her voice was broken, dry. She looked down, ashamed. She wasn't trying to trick him. She just didn't want to sleep on the frozen ground anymore, just one night. That's all she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, he stepped aside and opened the door. The human stepped aside and opened the door. Warm air spilled out from inside. She felt it on her face like sunlight after years of darkness. He didn't speak. He just watched her calmly. She was afraid to move. Her feet were dirty, her clothes torn. She smelled like rust and old metal. Would he change his mind if she stepped in? But then he nodded. Just once. That was enough. She pulled the blanket tighter around her thin shoulders and slowly stood. Her legs wobbled, but she didn't fall. With small steps, she entered the human's shelter. Inside, it was simple but warm. A fire burned in a stone hearth. A bed sat against the wall, untouched. There was a small table with a lantern and a chair made of old ship parts. The floor was covered in thick, soft rugs. Her eyes darted around, afraid it might be a trap. But the human just walked to the fire, crouched, and added 2 more logs. "Sit," he said, pointing to the chair. She didn't understand the word, but she understood the tone. It wasn't a command. It was kindness. Carefully, she sat. He handed her a second mug of warm broth. This one had herbs in it. The scent made her mouth water. She drank slowly, hands shaking. It warmed her belly, made her feel real again. The man sat on the floor near the fire, not too close, not too far. He didn't ask her questions, he didn't even stare. He just let her be. For her, that was the strangest part. In her world, no one ever gave without wanting something back. If someone offered food, it came with chains. If someone offered shelter, it meant work, or worse. But this human, he said, nothing. He expected nothing. He didn't even ask her name. She sat by the fire for over an hour, silent. Her fingers moved slowly over the edge of the mug, feeling the texture. She listened to the crackling wood, the wind tapping on the windows, and the human humming to himself as he fixed a broken tool. Finally, she whispered, "Why?" He looked up. She tried again. "Why? Help?" He didn't answer right away. He set down his tool and leaned back. "Because you looked cold," he said simply. She blinked. Cold? That's it? In her mind, it didn't make sense. Cold was normal. Suffering was expected. But to him, it was reason enough. She lowered her head and pulled the blanket tighter. Later that evening, she began to doze off in the chair. Her body leaned forward. Her eyes slipped closed. The fire crackled beside her, soft and steady. It was the first time she had felt safe in a very long time. The man stood up and tapped the edge of the blanket gently. "Bed," he said, pointing to the small bed in the corner. Her eyes widened. The bed? That wasn't for her. She shook her head quickly. No, I sleep floor." He shook his head. "You take the bed. I'll take the chair." Again, she hesitated. She didn't trust it. She didn't believe it. Was this a trick? He saw the fear in her eyes. So he walked to the chair and sat down himself. He didn't wait. He leaned back and closed his eyes like he was already falling asleep. Still watching him, she stood slowly and walked to the bed. Her fingers touched the blanket. It was thick, real. She slipped under it carefully like she was afraid it might vanish. It didn't. It was warm. It smelled of wood smoke and something gentle, like dried plants and soap. She curled up in it like a child, pulling it up to her chin. She stared at the ceiling. The firelight danced across the wooden beams above her. Her body relaxed. Her breath slowed. She didn't cry. She had no more tears left, but for the first time in 10 years, she slept. She didn't dream of war. She didn't see her mother's face fading in smoke. She didn't hear the sounds of blasters or screaming. Instead, she dreamed of firelight in a chair where someone kept watch. When morning came, sunlight touched her face. She opened her eyes and sat up slowly. The human was still there, sleeping in the chair, arms folded across his chest. She stared at him for a long time. Then she stood, walked quietly to the fire, and added 2 logs, just like he did the night before. She didn't know his name, but she knew one thing. He had changed something inside her. The human woke up to the smell of burning wood. He blinked slowly, rubbing his eyes. The fire had already been fed. The room was warm. And there, kneeling in front of the hearth, was the alien woman, quietly watching the flames. She had pulled the blanket tightly around herself, like a child clinging to safety. Her silver hair fell over her shoulders in long, tangled strands, and the side of her face glowed orange in the firelight. She noticed him stir but didn't turn fully. She only whispered, "I fed the fire." He nodded. She had slept in his bed. He had slept in the chair, and the world had not ended. A long silence passed between them. He stretched, cracked his neck, then stood and walked to the small stove. He poured water into a kettle and placed it above the flame. Still no words. But the silence was not heavy. Not anymore. She looked at him, eyes full of question. "You didn't come into bed," she said slowly. Her voice was soft, like wind passing through broken walls. He raised an eyebrow. "It was yours," he said simply. "Why?" "Because you needed it more." That made her chest tighten. She didn't know what to say. Most beings she had met would have taken advantage of her. She was used to lies, traps, harsh words, but not this. She looked at him for a long time and then asked in a whisper, "Can I stay one more night?" The human stirred the pot. "Do you want to?" Her lips parted. "Yes." Later that day, she helped him carry firewood. Her arms were weak, but she tried. He watched her stumble, then offered a glove. She took it surprised, and together they stacked wood beside the door. She didn't talk much. Just small things. "This is your home?" "Just a shelter," he replied. "I build outposts, live where they send me." She paused. "So, you won't stay forever?" He gave a little smile. "No one does." Her eyes dropped to the ground. That night she sat on the rug again, holding another cup of hot broth. The fire crackled beside her, and the wind outside had started to howl. She stared into the flames. 10 years, no fire, no bed, no kindness. Her voice broke on the last word. He said nothing, just listened. "I used to dream of warmth. I used to beg stars to give me just one night, in a warm bed." She looked at him now, eyes wet. "You gave me that, without asking anything." He shrugged gently. "Didn't seem like much." "It is," she said. "To me, it is everything." She moved her hand toward the firelight, showing her wrist. Faint marks could be seen, old, faded scars. "Chains," she whispered. "From my own kind. I was a reminder of the war. They called me cursed." The human's jaw clenched. He didn't like what he heard, but he didn't interrupt her. "They locked me in old places, left me. I screamed until I had no voice. Then I learned to be silent." The human finally spoke. "You're not cursed." She looked at him. Really, looked at him. He leaned closer. "You're strong. You're alive. And you have every right to ask for a bed." She blinked quickly, trying to stop tears. "You think so?" "I know so." That night, she didn't wait for him to guide her. She walked to the bed herself, but before getting in, she turned. She pointed at the chair. "Please don't sleep." "There again?" He raised a brow. "Where should I sleep then?" She hesitated, then quietly said, "There's room on the floor, beside the fire. It's warmer than that chair." He thought for a moment, then nodded. He laid a mat beside the hearth and covered himself with a spare blanket. Before blowing out the lantern, she whispered, "Thank you, human." He chuckled. "You can call me James." She repeated it slowly. "James." And after a long pause added, "My name is Yari." That night, both slept peacefully. The fire never died. The wind outside howled and screamed through the ruins, but inside that little shelter, two souls rested. Not as strangers, but something else. Something new. Yari had never slept so deeply in her life. No cold floor, no sharp winds, no monsters in the dark, just warmth, safety, and silence. She didn't even hear the fire crackling nearby, or the snowstorm outside. Her body finally rested after 10 years of pain. Her fingers, always clenched in fear, now curled, loosely against the soft blanket. Her breathing was steady. Calm. James stayed awake longer than usual. He sat near the fire, arms folded across his chest, staring at the sleeping alien woman in his bed. She didn't move, didn't flinch. Her chest rose and fell gently, like a child lost in a peaceful dream. He was used to danger, years of working in broken colonies, building shelters for survivors. But this was different. He'd never shared space with someone so wounded, so lost, and yet so full of quiet strength. He wondered what her life had been like before all this. What had she eaten? How had she survived the winters? Who had she trusted, if anyone? Her face twitched slightly in her sleep. A small frown formed, then relaxed again. James sighed, then whispered, "You're safe now. Sleep." The next morning, soft sunlight lit the small cabin. Yari opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The warmth confused her. The pillow beneath her head felt unreal. But then she heard the gentle clink of metal. James was cooking something over the fire. She sat up fast, panicking, until he turned and smiled. "You slept long," he said. Yari blinked. I didn't mean to." "It's okay. You needed it." She looked down, embarrassed. But then, she smiled. A tiny one. It felt strange on her lips. She hadn't smiled in years. James handed her a bowl of warm oatmeal with sweet root syrup. She sniffed it carefully, then tasted a small bite. Her eyes widened. It was soft, warm, sweet. "Is this real?" she asked quietly. He chuckled. "As real as I can make it." She ate slowly, carefully. Her hands still shook, but she didn't stop. After the meal, James pulled out a small notebook and started writing notes for repairs he needed to do. Yari just sat nearby, near the fire, holding the empty bowl in her lap like it was treasure. "Can I help?" she asked. Suddenly, he looked up. "Help with what?" "Anything." James thought for a second, then handed her a small cloth. "You can clean the cups." She nodded and got to work, slowly, awkwardly, but with great care. Later that day, they stepped outside for more wood. The snow was deep, but the sun was bright. Yari wore one of James's old jackets. It was too big for her, and the sleeves dragged, but it kept her warm. She smiled again when her boots crunched the snow. It was the first time she'd walked outside without fear in a very long time. James handed her a bundle of firewood. "You carry this?" She nodded, holding it tightly. When they returned inside, she placed it near the fire proudly. "I did it," she said, almost laughing. He smiled. "You did?" That night after dinner, Yari sat near the fire again. She looked at the flames for a long time. Her hands rested in her lap. Her eyes were soft. "May I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Why didn't you touch me?" James looked confused. "What?" "You gave me your bed, you fed me, you helped me, but you never touched me." She looked at him with real curiosity. "Others always did. When I was weak, when I was scared. They used me." James's expression grew serious. "Because you're not something to use, Yari, you're a person." She stared at him. "I didn't help you because I wanted something. I helped you because you needed help." Tears filled her eyes. No one had ever said that to her before. She stood up and walked to the bed again. But this time, she turned before getting in. She held out the blanket to him. You can have the bed tonight. He shook his head. It's still yours. She smiled softly. Then, maybe we can share it. Just sleep. Nothing else. I don't want to be alone again. James hesitated, then nodded. They lay on opposite sides of the bed, backs turned, but the warmth was shared. No words needed, just quiet understanding. The fire burned beside them. The wind howled outside. But the night was peaceful, and in that moment Yari truly believed. Her cold years were ending. Yari woke before sunrise. She didn't move at first. She just lay there, feeling the soft bed under her back, the warmth beside her, and the quiet breathing of the man who had given her more than food and fire. He had given her something she never thought she'd feel again: peace. James lay on the far side of the bed, turned away, arms folded. He hadn't touched her. Not once. Even in sleep, he kept a respectful distance. Yari turned her face toward the window. Pale light was creeping in. Snow still fell outside, but the storm had passed. She let out a breath and whispered, "Maybe this is what healing feels like." By the time James woke, Yari had already started boiling water. She didn't know how to cook much, but she remembered how to prepare roots and herbs. Her mother had taught her long ago, before the war. James sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You're up early." Yari gave a small smile. "I had good sleep. No screams. No cold. That's good." She hesitated, then said, "I want to tell you something. About me." James stopped. "Only if you're ready." She looked down. Her hands trembled slightly. "I think I am." They sat near the fire, 2 cups of hot root tea between them. Yari began slowly, voice soft and uncertain. "I was born during war. I don't remember peace. My people lived underground, always hiding. We moved often. Then, one day, everything changed." She took a shaky breath. "My mother died when I was 8. My father left not long after. I was taken by soldiers. They said I was too small to fight, too quiet. So they put me in a cold storage shelter with others like me." James frowned. "Children?" She nodded. "Some were younger. Some were sick. None of us were wanted. When rations ran low, they left us." His chest tightened. "You survived alone?" "Not at first. There was a girl named Leia. She stayed with me. We shared everything. But one winter, she didn't wake up." Yari went silent for a while. The fire crackled beside them. James didn't speak. He knew silence could be safer than words. "I stopped speaking after that," Yari continued. "I thought if I stayed quiet, no one would notice me. Maybe that was safer." "And it worked?" She shook her head. "Not really. I was still beaten, thrown out of shelters, called cursed." "Because you survived?" "Because I didn't die like the others," she said, tears gathering in her eyes. "Because I kept coming back, no matter how much they hated me." James looked at her, truly looked at her, not as a fragile thing, but as someone incredibly strong. "You shouldn't have had to survive like that," he said. "You deserved better." Yari wiped her eyes. "Maybe. But I didn't believe that until now." They spent the day quietly, chopping wood and repairing cracks in the wall. James showed her how to use a small wrench, and she fixed a broken shelf with shaking hands. Every time she did something right, he smiled. Every time she failed, he guided her gently. No shouting, no blame. That evening, as the snow fell again, Yari stared into the fire with a soft expression. She looked tired, but not the kind of tired from cold or hunger. It was the kind of tired that came from letting go. James placed a folded cloth on the table beside her. Inside was a fresh shirt and a simple pair of soft leggings. "Not much," he said, "but they'll fit better than that jacket." She touched the fabric gently. "This is too much." "No, it's not," he said. "You deserve comfort." She didn't reply. She simply nodded and stood up. She stepped behind the small curtain that separated the room and changed. When she returned, James looked up, and for the first time she looked like herself. Still thin. Still pale, but not broken. "I don't want to go back," she said quietly. He blinked. "Back where?" "To the ruins, to the shadows. I want to stay here. Just for a while. Just until the cold season ends." James smiled. "You can stay, as long as you want." She looked surprised. "Truly?" He nodded. "This place? It's just walls and wood. But with you here, it feels more like home." Tears gathered in her eyes again. "No one has ever said that to me." He reached forward, slowly, and placed his hand over hers. Not forceful, not demanding, just warm. "I'm not like the others," he said. "You don't have to run anymore." And for the first time in 10 years, Yari believed him. The human town sat just over the hill, quiet but watching. It wasn't large, maybe 20 homes, a shop, and a comms tower. People there had heard about the man who chose to live in the old colony ruins. They thought he was strange and lonely, but harmless, until one day someone saw her. Yari stood outside James's shelter, hanging clothes to dry on a thin rope. The snow had stopped, and the sun peeked through the clouds. Her long silver hair blew gently in the breeze. She hummed quietly, to herself, wearing the soft clothes James had given her. She didn't know someone was watching from the ridge. A traitor. He rode back into town fast. "There's an alien girl at the old outpost," he said. "Pretty one. Been living with the builder." By nightfall, the town was buzzing. Is she dangerous? Is she a spy? What if she's infected? Why is he keeping her? Alone? What's he doing with her? Whispers turned to stares. Stares turned to words. James came to town the next day for supplies. He walked through the small marketplace calmly, as always, but he could feel the difference. Eyes followed him, voices lowered when he passed. Old Ms. Granger, who usually sold him dry root and herbs, didn't speak this time. She just placed the bag on the counter and looked away. At the supply station, one of the local guards stepped forward. "You've got company out there, huh?" the man said. James kept his voice calm. "She's not company. She's someone who needed help. A lot of folks here think it's dangerous, bringing one of them into our homes." James narrowed his eyes. "She's not a threat. She's not one of us either." "I didn't know kindness had borders," James said sharply. The guard's face tightened. "Don't bring her into town, that's all I'm saying." James picked up his supplies and walked out. Back at the shelter, Yari waited by the fire. When James returned, she noticed the tension in his shoulders. "Bad day?" she asked. He nodded. "They saw you." Yari's smile faded. "They're angry? They don't understand." She sat down slowly. "Maybe I should go." "No." She looked at him. "You've done nothing wrong," James said firmly. "You deserve warmth, safety, and if they don't see that, that's their problem." Yari stared at the fire for a while. "James," she whispered, "what if they come? What if they try to take me? Then they'll have to get through me." 2 nights later it happened. A rock smashed through their window. James jumped up. Yari froze, covering her head by instinct. Outside, someone shouted, "Take your pet alien somewhere else." Then silence. Whoever it was had run. James stood in the snow, fists clenched. The firelight behind him cast his shadow tall and wide. Yari stepped out slowly behind him. "I'm sorry. This is because of me." "No," James said without turning. "This is because they don't know you. They don't know what you've lived through." He looked back at her. "But I do." He fixed the window the next morning. That afternoon, Yari walked into town. Alone. James didn't stop her. He only said, "If they don't listen, come back." She walked slowly. People stared. Some whispered, She didn't shout, didn't cry. She only went to the center square, where the townspeople gathered sometimes to trade or talk. She stood there and said in a clear, soft voice, "My name is Yari. I'm not here to harm anyone. I'm not a spy. I'm not a curse. I am just cold and tired, and I wanted a warm bed. That's all." People were silent. A little girl peeked from behind, her mother's coat. "Is your hair real?" Yari smiled gently and nodded. The girl stepped forward and offered her a flower. The mother pulled her back quickly, but the moment had already happened. Later that evening, James waited at the door, heart pounding. Then he saw her. She returned walking slowly, but she was not crying. He opened the door. "Yari?" "They didn't throw stones," she said softly. "Some even listened." James smiled. "You're brave." "No," she whispered. "I'm just tired of hiding." She stepped inside and leaned against him. "I want to stay, even if they hate me." "You don't have to worry," James said. "You're not going anywhere." And for the first time, Yari didn't feel like a visitor. She felt like someone who belonged. The season slowly began to shift. Snow still covered the ground, but the winds grew softer and sunlight stayed longer each day. The cold was no longer cruel. It was just part of life now. Yari no longer flinched when someone knocked at the door. She no longer sat with her back to the wall watching every shadow. Instead, she smiled in the mornings. She fed the fire. She cooked simple meals. She read small books James gave her. Children's books, with bright pictures and easy words. And at night, she sat by the fire and told stories about her childhood. Good ones, when she could remember. James never rushed her. He let her grow like a small plant in a safe corner of the world. One morning, Yari woke to the smell of something sweet. She rubbed her eyes and looked around. The bed was empty. James wasn't in the room. Then she heard humming and a soft clatter of dishes. She stood up, confused. When she walked out, she saw the table was set neatly, warmly. A wooden plate held slices of dried fruit, warm bread, and a soft brown cake with melted sugar on top. James turned from the stove, holding a steaming cup of her favorite tea. "Good morning," he said. Yari blinked. "What is this?" He smiled and handed her the cup. "Today is your birthday." Her hand trembled. "No, it can't be." "It is," he said. "You told me once your birthday fell just after the third snow melts. That happened yesterday." She lowered her eyes. "I didn't think you remembered." "I remember everything you say." Yari sat down at the table slowly, eyes wide. "I haven't had a birthday since I was a child," she whispered. "No cake, no candles, nothing." "Well," James said, sitting across from her, "there are no candles, but there's something else." He reached beneath the table and placed a small box in front of her. It was wrapped in fabric and tied with string. Yari stared at it. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said. She untied it slowly, carefully unfolding the cloth. Inside was a handmade scarf, soft, woven with care, and dyed in a beautiful shade of silver blue, the same color as her eyes. Her lips parted, but no words came. James spoke gently. "You always wrapped that old jacket tight around your neck. I figured you deserved something better." Tears filled her eyes. She held the scarf close to her chest. "I don't know what to say." "Just eat your cake," James said, smiling. She laughed through the tears. After breakfast, they walked outside. The snow was soft and glittering under the sun. Yari wore the scarf proudly, her arms swinging gently at her sides. "I never thought I'd live to see another birthday," she said. James looked at her. "I never thought a birthday could mean so much. Until now." They walked through the woods nearby where small birds had returned. Yari listened to their songs, eyes shining. Her bare hand brushed against James's, but she didn't pull away, and this time, neither did he. As the day ended, they sat near the fire again, The soft glow lit Yari's face and she leaned her head against James's shoulder. I used to think I'd never be anything more than a shadow, she whispered. James looked down at her. You're not a shadow, Yari. You're the brightest light in this place. She smiled, cheeks warm. Thank you. For everything. For the bed. For the scarf. For remembering my birthday. He paused, then asked gently, Can I give you one more gift? Yari looked up, curious. James reached out, slowly brushing her hair behind her ear. He leaned closer, but not too close, waiting. She gave the smallest nod. And then, their foreheads touched. A quiet moment, a soft breath. Not a kiss. Not yet. But something just as powerful. Connection. Understanding. Hope. That night, Yari stood at the window looking out at the stars. She whispered softly, 10 years in the cold, and now, finally, I'm home. Behind her, James added wood to the fire, making sure it would burn through the night. As Yari turned back toward him, she wasn't just smiling. She was glowing, and the warmth wasn't only from the fire anymore. It was from the life she was finally beginning to live.